Hey everybody, welcome to Grow My Wedding Business. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Listen, this is a fantastic episode. If you're listening to the podcast, if you're watching the YouTube video, I want you to pay close attention. The gentleman that I'm talking to today, Keith Carson, is the one who wrote the foreword in my new book. He is a very experienced, knowledgeable business owner and wedding officiant, wedding business vendor, I guess you could say, if you're listening to the Grow My Wedding Business podcast. It doesn't matter what you do in the wedding industry. The information he's going to share with you today and our conversation is extremely valuable. And he talks about marketing. He talks about building relationships. He talks about things that I talk about, but it's from his own perspective, and it is fantastic. So I'm not going to waste any more time. Thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you get a lot out of this. Enjoy. So this episode, I think we're going to kind of talk about being in this full time. Keith, I've had so many people this year, and we'll jump right in if that's okay with you.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
So I've had so many people this last year, and me and you have talked on the phone a few times, say that they don't see how in the world you can do this business full time. They're just blown away that anybody is doing it full time. And I don't know what the wall is up that a lot of these folks have, but they come into it, and I guess they think the market is so saturated or something like that. But I try to explain to them, it's really not saturated with absolute professional people who do it correctly. It's really saturated with people who jump in and want to make a quick dollar and all that stuff. So I'm having to explain, and I don't even know if I should go this far, but I'm going to anyway. I had somebody reach out to me on my YouTube channel on Grow My Officiant Business, and they said, I just think the stuff you're saying is baloney. I don't think anybody could make a full-time income on this, and there's no possible way. I've been in this for a year, and I could have a hard time getting couples to pay me what I ask and all this sort of stuff. So me saying all that stuff to you, I want to get your take. First of all, what is your take on everything I just said?
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with you. I mean, one of the benefits for me of being a full-time wedding officiant is, couples tend to call during the daytime. They tend to submit your online form from your website with an inquiry during the daytime, or email you during the daytime. And I often get told by couples, you're the only person that answered the phone, or you're the only person that got back with me. So I make a very good living out of doing this full time. I own a beautiful house on 5 acres, and this is what I do for a living. I think it's one of those things, you get out of it what you put into it. And oftentimes people that do it part-time, even good ones, are afraid to pull the trigger. They have that security blanket of another job, whether it's part-time or full-time, and they're afraid of, gee, what happens if I pull that trigger? Do I lose benefits? Will I lose money? How will I pay my bills? And it's one of those things you don't know, I think, until you really try. But it's working well for me, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
So how long have you been doing this total, Keith?
Coming up on 10 years.
Wow, that's huge, because the economy has not always been the greatest. It's been up and down. But I tell people that this is something that you can pivot pretty easily, as far as you've done all types of ceremonies. You've done Viking ceremonies and pirate ceremonies, Santa Claus. You've done all kinds of stuff. So it's something that you can pivot if you need to, but still stay pretty close to your professionalism and exactly what you are as a creative officiant. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the biggest problem that people have is, and not just in this profession, I see it in other professions, in the wedding industry and elsewhere. People start a business and they sit down and they wait for the phone to ring. When you should be out there doing marketing, you should be out there figuring out ways to grow your business. I found a great way to take my slower days and turn them into business. And it's worked incredibly well. I've never gotten a no answer, and I don't think what I'm doing is anything that anybody else can't do. But people aren't thinking of it. People either are lazy, or just don't have the knowledge of how to grow their business. I don't know what the reasons are, but if you market yourself, if you hustle, the business is there. There's couples getting married now, I think more than ever. I'm doing more weekday weddings than I ever had, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the weekends are booked. You know, we had a lot of people that during COVID that had to reschedule. Engagements continued. People started booking weddings again, and now they're all fighting for that Friday or Saturday, and finding that they're shut out from the venue they want or the vendors they want. So they're saying, "Hey, I'll do it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday." So it's not a weekend business anymore. You've got to build your business, and you've got to do it the right way.
So when you first started, I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this that are first starting. What were the first few things that you did that you can, looking back now, see that they were really important, or maybe a few things that weren't really important that you needed to do something different?
Yeah, I think as far as a wedding officiant, I think you have people that treat this as a side hustle. And even if it is a side hustle, it's still a business, and you have to treat it like a business. So you can't wing it. You don't want to be lying on the gurney being wheeled into the operating room and have that surgeon ask for a scalpel, and the nurse hands it to him, and the doctor says, "Okay, now what do I need to do?"
Yeah.
And I see that time and time again among wedding officiants. You have to do the research. You have to, find out, what your market will bear as far as fees. I mean, I've seen fees being charged anywhere from, a couple of $100s up to thousands of dollars for the same thing, depending on the market. So you've got to do all your homework. The worst thing that I see are officiants on different social media groups saying, "Hey, I just booked my first wedding. What do I need to know?" Or how do I complete a marriage license? These are all the things before you ever even book a wedding that you need to do. Nobody is going to open a retail store and spend that kind of money and then just not have a clue of what's going to sell, what's not going to sell, how much they need, how to operate a business. You have to treat this like a business. So for me, the name was very important. The logo was very important. So if you look at my logo, yes, it has a wedding look to it, has the word weddings in it, but it's very gender neutral. So I'll see wedding officiants that have a logo which, have a male groom and a female bride, or a diamond ring that a bride would typically wear and a wedding band a groom would typically wear. And then they say, "Hey, yeah, I do same-sex weddings." Well, nothing about your name or your logo or your image says that. So care has to be taken into all of those things. Getting a website. I hear people say all the time, "Well, sometimes couples ask me how long I've been doing this." In the nearly 10 years I've been doing this, I may have been asked that question twice.
Yeah.
I think in all those years, it really doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, because people could be doing it as long as me and be horrible, and people could be doing it a week and be fantastic. So it's like, what are you worth? How good do you think that you are, to know what to charge and how to market yourself properly. So choose wisely in a name. Get yourself a good logo. It's your image. Put together a nice website. Don't go to one of these freebie websites and build something that has ads and other things popping up on it. If you don't have the money, I understand. It's a tough economy right now for some. Save your money. It's worth it. Do it right the first time. And when you've got everything, all your ducks in a row, only then should you be looking to book your first wedding, including what are the laws in your state and things like that. And people are just, again, they're being lazy, they're cutting corners. Not saying everybody, but I see a lot of this, and I hear, as you probably do, a lot of horror stories from venues and other vendors about officiants.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do too. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think the people realize how much damage they can do until it's already done. They show up and they don't really know what they should do on the license or what they should say to make it a real wedding and make it a real marriage. And, after the fact, they find out, and then they've hurt all of this time that they've put in the couple, and they've kind of embarrassed them. And so I think what you're saying is like one of the most important things you can absolutely do. Make sure you've done all of your research and have all your ducks in a row. You said something a second ago, and we had a little training a few weeks ago, and somebody brought this up to my attention. They said, I've been advertising, I've been doing my website, I've had all of this stuff out, and I just can't get couples to say yes to me. And then upon further looking into it, I noticed that on their website, there was a plethora of things that they were doing. You go to their website and it had a name that really didn't tell me it was an officiant. It was kind of a ministry name. And then it said, down on the page that they officiate weddings, but I had to dig for it. And then it also said they did counseling. It had a lot of things. Tell me about, because you understand the importance from logo to perception of the person when they first see your website. How important is it to be streamlined and teach people your message right away without having them dig through stuff?
Oh, it's extremely important. I mean, people's attention spans are, very, very small. And, I get some things through Google Analytics and other things that help tell me how long someone is on a page on my website and things. So I see oftentimes they're in and out. I'll get couples or a bride or a groom that will message me through my online form and ask a question like, what are your prices? Well, my prices and packages are clearly posted on my website. So what that tells me is that people are not spending a lot of time. They spend enough time to say, I get it. I know what this person does. Everything looks very professional. I'm interested. And that seems to be about it. So I was fortunate with my website because the woman who designed my website happened to have been a wedding officiant at one time and was also someone who was incredibly talented in website design and search engine optimization and all of those things. So she got it. But I also shared my website with other people before I had to go live to make sure, hey, look, put yourself in the hat put the hat on of the bride or the groom. And does this answer your questions? And I think we as officiants or any wedding vendor need to wear two hats. We have to wear the hat of the vendor, but we also have to wear the hat of the client. What is the client likely to ask? If I was this client, what would I want to know? And, what information would I be looking for? So you've got to kind of look at it from both sides. So the same thing, when I felt that website was ready to go, it went live and only when I felt it was ready to go. And it's always a work in progress. I'm always adding, pictures, blog posts and things, because the more you update it, the more often you update it, the higher it'll help your rankings on Google and other search engines.
Yeah. And so from what you just said, the attention span thing is huge in my opinion, because when you go to your website, you see a wedding logo and people know what you just said. They know that you are a wedding officiant. But if you go to a site and somebody's name, they haven't named their thing anything weddings or officiant, and it's just so and so ministries, they might think it's a ministry or a church or something like that. And if it's not, on the first page that they do weddings, they're probably just going to leave and go look for another officiant. So,
yeah, when they did that search, wedding officiant near me or whatever, if they list a city, there's going to be a list that comes up, and they're going to want to click on, several of them to get a good feel of, what looks good, what doesn't. So, I mean, on my homepage in big bold letters, it's got my name and says wedding officiant. So, there's no mistaking, what I do. And I think the attractiveness of the site overall is really what draws people in. I've had many couples, I've had mothers of brides say, "Oh my God, we're on your website. It's beautiful," and things like that. So I look at all of this stuff, your name, your logo, your website, any marketing materials, brochures, flyers, all that. That's your image. It's you. With me, my name happens to be in the name of my business. So I like to say I stand by my name. My name is my reputation, and I want to make sure I put the best foot forward.
So I love that. Kind of coming off of that, you just said your reputation. Obviously your reputation has to be good with other vendors and venues, and you get a lot of your business from those probably. I put a small book out, like a free book called the Guide to Building Wedding Business Relationships a few months ago, maybe a year ago, but a lot of people have downloaded it, and some people get it and they're like, well, this is really simple. I don't know why I need to be told to go build relationships with vendors and venues. But then when I ask people, well, how much of your business comes from venues and other vendors? Well, none. Like, well, hello, how much of your business comes from venues?
Oh gosh, I probably from venues, probably easily 50%.
Wow.
Of my business, and I also have a good portion that comes from other vendors.
Wow.
So here's the thing. I don't want to work harder. I want to work smarter. So anybody that's looking to book a wedding vendor, photographer, or whatever, the best thing that can happen is somebody said, use so and so. They're amazing. Those referrals mean more than just finding you on the internet in a directory or whatever. Because they know that, gee, if the venue recommends Keith or this photographer recommends Keith, and Keith doesn't do a good job, I'm not going to be mad entirely at Keith. I'm going to be more mad at the venue or the vendor. It's their reputation because they recommended this individual. So, when they recommend you, people know they've obviously worked together. They work well together. They have a good relationship. I'll still do my homework, but that reputation, that relationship goes such a long way.
Yeah. What are your favorite ways to market? Or I know right now you get most word of mouth and things like that, but back in the day, was that your favorite way of marketing? Just talking and getting word of mouth from referrals?
I did things like go to, Chamber of Commerce meetings,
Mm-hmm.
business card exchanges and things like that. I don't think early on that did much for me and,
Right.
and things like that. But I had this brainstorm one day. Again, doing it full time, it makes it easy. So, I on Monday, I sit in the office and, I'm doing all the paperwork, signing and completing all the marriage licenses from the weekend. And I'm getting ready to write scripts and things like that. So, again, I'm not doing weddings every day of the week, but I usually do, 2, 3, 4 during the week plus the weekends. So I'm doing about, I do about, 10 weddings, 12 weddings a month.
Yeah.
Which is good. Some more, some less, depending on the time of year. But I realized that, I've got this time free during the week. So I started reaching out to different venue owners, introducing myself, and I would do this in an email or a phone call and say, my name is Keith Carson. I'm a wedding officiant. My company's called Keith Carson Weddings. Oftentimes, I have couples that will ask me for a recommendation. Whether it's a photographer, a florist, a caterer, but oftentimes it's a venue. And I just realized I've never done a wedding at your venue. I would love to set up a time that's convenient, come out and take a tour and become familiar with your place. I've never had anybody say no. And I did 6 when I first tried this. I did 6 inside 1 week, and I walked out of 6 venues on the preferred vendor list.
Wow.
Now, as established as I am, about 2-3 weeks ago, I did the same thing with 3 venues that I had not heard of. One actually recommended me, and when I called her saying, hey, how did you come to recommend me? She said, oh, I just did a Google search and found you. And then just, went to meet with her. But 3 more walked out on the preferred vendor list. And here's what I'm hearing from these venues. They're getting officiants that are asking to be put on the preferred vendor list, but they're doing it in an email or a phone call.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to take that kind of chance when they've not met with you, not talked with you, not seen how you operate, how professional or unprofessional you are, what kind of job you do. But by going there in person and bringing professional marketing materials, spending time with them, talking about how you operate, how you work with your couples, it's a complete different story.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to you can't sit at home on the couch waiting for the phone to ring or an email to come in, asking about your services. And it's great because I've got this whole sales force out there of venues and other wedding vendors. I recently made a marketing flyer which has a list of all the wedding venues that recommend me and all the wedding planners that recommend me. And it says something like, there's a reason that all these venues, all these wedding planners, as well as other wedding vendors like photographers and DJs recommend, Keith Carson Weddings. And it's got that whole list. It's got a little graphic at the bottom that shows that I have all 5-star reviews on Google and I have all 5-star reviews on Facebook. And it very simply asks, can I add you to the list? And that's
Wow.
one of the things that I bring with me. And they look at this and they say, these are some impressive looking, venues that they respect. And it's not real hard, but you've got to make the effort. You've got to go out there and do it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because I preach this to people that I talk to about building relationships. That little booklet that's been out for a year and people can get for free literally talks about getting off of your butt and meeting people at their venue. You just clarified so much, Keith. I wish you knew. I have talked to people and said, but going in and meeting the person and scheduling a time to meet them, no venue is going to turn you down. They're never going to say, no, you can't tour my venue. And then you have the opportunity to give them your stuff, build a relationship, and add that person to a list. Even if they don't add you then, you'll build that relationship and they will add you, like you said, when they get to know you. So that is huge.
And I have referred couples to these venues.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about couples that have approached me. I'm talking about on like Facebook groups where couples are looking for different whatever. I'm looking for a DJ. I'm looking for a photographer. I'm looking for a venue. And if it happens to be in somewhere of an area that I'm familiar with, I'll ask them, Do you want your ceremony and reception at the same place? You're looking for inside, outside, combination, all those things. And then I'll recommend places, and they've booked them. So it's a two-way relationship between you and that vendor. I did a wedding at a venue that recommends me all the time. I'm there every month.
Wow.
Doing weddings, and the wedding planner, the couple wasn't from this area, so the wedding planner they hired was in the Orlando, Florida area, and she happened to recommend Orlando vendors for everything: photographer, the violinist, the DJ, the florist, the caterer. I mean, everybody was from Orlando. And when it came to the officiant, she told them, she said, listen, you probably want to go with someone local, or, if you book someone from here, they're going to charge you a travel fee and things like that. So the couple asked the venue. The venue said, this is Keith. He's our preferred wedding officiant. They ended up booking me. Everything went incredible. The wedding planner, who I'd never worked with before, asked me for my card. The DJ said, you know what? He said, if you were in the Orlando area, he said, doing the job you do, you'd be making six figures.
Wow.
Straight up honest face. He says, I do a lot of weddings. And he said, I've seen a lot of officiants. And he said, the way you handle everything, conduct everything, he said, you could easily make, six figures. But it's also one of the reasons why I get to the wedding an hour in advance.
Yeah.
So I can have that time to talk to the photographers, to talk to the DJ, the musician, the venue owners, the wedding planner, whoever's there, I get their ear and talk to them. Photographers, it are amazed when you go up, and my typical spiel is I'll go up, I'll introduce myself and tell them, I understand, I know you're professional, so feel free to shoot wherever you want. It won't bother me. If there's something special, like they're going to do sand blending or unity candle, I'll tell them that, and where it's going to be, or I'll tell the DJ, while they're pouring sand, it can be slow. Can you put on an instrumental, piece of music? So I go over everything with everybody. With the photographer, I'm still shocked when I tell them, by the way, when I tell them they can kiss, I will step out of your picture. And they look at me like, you're an angel sent from heaven. And it's just, it's common sense. But
Yeah.
yet there are wedding officiants that do not get out of don't get out of the shot. I've had some say they've actually refused to get out of the shot.
Oh my gosh.
But by doing all this, by being professional, and again, those relationships, even if it's just for a few minutes, it gives everyone peace of mind, and you don't know what kind of business it's going to get you in the future.
Yeah. That's so good. It's funny because I've had the same reaction before. I'm like, do no officiants move out of the way? I don't know what's going on here. I don't know. It's so crazy. But I have heard from photographers and asked them when they said that, I'm like, what, have you experienced that? And they say the same thing you just said. They're like, there are some, I don't know, maybe they're religious minister or whatever, but they think they're too important and they're not going to step aside. And I'm like, this is crazy. It's their day,
It's about the two of them, not the three of us. Is what
exactly.
I always say. I mean, I had one photographer said, I've been doing this 10 years. He goes, you're the first officiant who ever came up to me and said, I will step out of your picture.
That's
because
so sad.
I always have to ask. Now, that doesn't mean that the officiant always says, oh, okay, or, whatever, or, okay, if you want me to.
Right.
But no one, he said, in the 10 years he's been doing weddings has ever said, by the way, I will get out of your picture.
And that right there, to everyone listening, no matter what part of the wedding industry you're in, is how, it shows you that most people in this industry are not treating their business like it's $1 million business. They're not there all the time early, and they don't treat the schedule like they need to stick to it no matter what, like it's going to cost them their living. They don't treat it like that, and that's obvious right there. I'm in North Carolina, you're in Florida, and we've had the exact same experience where people are not doing something so basic and respectful. It should be part of your conversation with the couple and the photographer and everybody. Everything should be thought through, but it's not. It's just the way it is in this industry, and I don't know why it's like that, but it doesn't matter what sector it is. I've met planners that are all over the place, that are late, that it's like they don't know what they're doing, like they started this yesterday. I've met photographers, I've met officiants. So it's so important, for the sake of the business of whoever's listening, I want you to get it in your head to treat it like that business that it could be.
One thing that shocked me, and I didn't learn this until about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So we all know that a friend or family member, can officiate a wedding and often does. But I did not know until I read this, like I said, a year and a half, 2 years ago, that it said 52% of weddings are officiated by a friend or a family member. That means the majority of weddings are done by someone other than a professional. So, and that's important, because that's a lot where the horror stories come from. A venue I went to, and I showed up and I greeted the owner, and she just looked at me and said, "Oh, thank God it's you." And I said, "Well, thanks. It's nice to be here. And why that kind of greeting?" And she said, "Well, we had a wedding here last weekend, and the wedding officiant was a friend of the bride and groom, had never done a wedding before, was a complete nervous wreck." And she said, "How did he handle it? He went straight to the bar and proceeded to get, pretty well intoxicated, and then went to do the wedding ceremony." So what people have to understand is that we're already being thought of negatively in a lot of circumstances, not because of the professionals, but because of those 52%. Yeah. I've seen videos online where couples, at least in this state, are not legally married because the officiant missed one of the three required segments of a ceremony to be legally married. And you think about it, it's just like two videos I just happen to see. I'm sure if I searched, I would probably find hundreds of people that are not legally married. So, you've already got kind of this negative stereotype view of you because of horror stories. Yeah. Don't make it worse.
That's so funny that we went down this lane. I did a training last week, and there was, 18 people there. And the whole training was focused on how there are two tiers. There are more people in tier one that are not professional. And then there's a small percentage of the people in the second tier that actually treat it like a business. And it's not hard to stick out like a sore thumb either way. You just have to choose, how much effort do I want to put in, or how lazy do I want to be? It's a scary thing. It really is. Yeah. But for those, go ahead.
I tell people all the time, DJs, for example, I'll see people post online, "I'm looking for an affordable DJ." I don't know what affordable means. What's affordable to one person is not to another, and vice versa. I mean, you're better off putting a budget range or dollar range. But I'll private message them and say, "Listen, I just want to share this with you. I am not a DJ, but here's what's going to happen at your wedding. You're going to look beautiful. Okay, the groom is going to look handsome. The food will be fantastic. The decorations, will be nice. But the only thing people will remember when they leave your wedding is, did I have a good time?" And that falls squarely on the DJ.
Yeah.
And today, anybody can go out and buy a computer program, and some speakers and call themselves a DJ, just like anybody can buy a camera and call themselves a photographer, or anybody can go online and become ordained and call themselves a wedding officiant. But here's what I always say. I can't go to the store and buy a stethoscope and call myself a doctor. So you've got to do your homework. Just because they're calling themselves that doesn't mean they're any good.
Yeah.
And just because they're the cheapest, doesn't mean they're even remotely good.
So I want to bring up, for those people who are treating this like a business, and this will be going out to people who own venues and wedding planners, but one of the things that's kind of the same no matter what niche you're in, is trying to find couples who are qualified, because a lot of times there are couples, like you said, they want the cheapest of the cheap. They want to dollar you, every little bit of the way. So what is something that you can offer people, some advice on how to find qualified clients, or at least qualify them? Thank you for listening today. Head on over to part 2, which is the next video.